What are the best roles to perform when you are a new grad nurse or a nursing student in a code? As an ICU nurse, I have been in my fair share of code blues and I am very familiar with all the different roles. So let's talk about which ones are maybe better ones to start off with and which ones should you work your way up towards. First and foremost, if this is your first code ever, there's nothing wrong with taking a step back and just being an observer and identifying and watching all the different roles and what the nurses are doing. If you're wanting to jump in and be involved, hands down, the best role to do is to be a compressor. When you're doing compressions, you're hands on, you're involved in the code blue process, but it's kind of more foolproof in the sense that like you're doing compressions, you're not having to think about really the meds, the timing, the history of the patient, etc. Another good option is to help manually bag the patient as well. Sometimes the respiratory therapists are already handling this role, but it's okay to say like, hey, do you want me to take over and do that for you? When you're comfortable with those two roles, I recommend moving to doing the med pushing. Pushing meds requires a little bit more skill in the sense that you need to know which meds you're pushing, when you're pushing them, where you're pushing them, and it's a little bit more intricate than doing compressions. When you're comfortable with doing that, I recommend moving to being the recorder, because the recorder is someone who needs to know all different aspects of the code, what you're looking for. You're able to make suggestions. I don't typically recommend that a new person records a code because there is a lot of information that you're writing down and you need to be like on it with your times and everything. After that, I recommend that you run the code card. You need to be very familiar with the code card, the defibrillator, where the meds are, where all the different supplies are in the code card in order to be the person in charge of the code card. So this is definitely not a role that you would throw a new grad in or someone that's not familiar with the code card, because you need someone that's like can grab something in an instant. Once you are comfortable with all those roles, then you could potentially be the nurse that is kind of in charge of running the code until another ACLS provider gets there to kind of take over for you. And this is just my 2 cents. Everyone might have a little bit different opinions, but just based on my experience for the last almost 8 years in the ICU and all the codes I've been in, I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. That's where I'd start.